Good morning. Daniel Swartz here. I want to talk about reasons and excuses. Are you confusing the two? What I mean is this. Are you making excuses for your bad behavior, or do you actually have a good reason? I think about that a little bit. So, do you have a reason for the anger you are showing, the anger you are presenting, or did you just find an excuse to allow the anger out that was already there? Do you have a good reason for the worry and the anxiety? Is this thing you're pointing at right now, is that the reason for your anxiety? Or did you already have the anxiety from something that you have not addressed properly, but the anxiety is always there under the surface? And this thing you're pointing at right now is just an excuse to let the anxiety out. Are you doing this in your life? Maybe not. Chances are you're doing it with something. So what happens a lot, I believe, with past trauma, um, with what happens a lot with past trauma is, especially when you are a child, you had something traumatic happen to you when you were younger that you didn't have control over, and you dealt with it a certain way, but you didn't have the skills and the knowledge to know how to properly deal with the subjects. So you came up with a mechanism to deal with it in that moment, and it worked for the moment. But the problem is you didn't properly address the trauma because you just didn't have the skills to do so. So you stuffed it somewhere. You stuck it in a closet somewhere. And think of your closet door as a trigger. And certain things happen in your life that set off the trigger and opens that closet door. And out comes the trauma. Anxiety, anger. For some people, it's addictions. Like you might be able to handle your addiction for a while, and then something triggers that trauma and opens up that closet door where you've stuffed it. You didn't get rid of it out of your life. You stuck it in a secret closet. And then something triggers it. And you open up that closet door and it just comes out. Your anxiety comes out. And then when it comes out, you don't point at the reason. You've never actually sat back and said, why am I doing this? Where is this truly coming from? You're just pointing at this thing in front of you and saying, that's why I'm doing this right now. And you're making an excuse for your bad behavior. But actually, you've had this anger with you. It's been a part of you for many, many, many years, and you've never properly identified the source of the anger. So when things trip your trigger and the anger comes bursting out, you blame the thing that tripped the trigger. But that's just an excuse to let the anger out. It's not the source of your anger, or bitterness, or anxiety, or alcohol, or pill addiction, or whatever it is. Whatever you have used to cope with the tragedy, it's in your little compartment until something trips the trigger and pop. And then when you have that outburst, it's calming to you, and you stuff it back in. And it has worked. The problem is, when you have these little things, it can become big things, especially in your new relationships. This new relationship, they accidentally trip your trigger, and your anger flares out. But this anger is not even anger pointed towards the person you're angry with. You have a unresolved anger from way back in the past, from some trauma that was done to you, and you're just taking it out on the poor bugger right in front of you. And they're like, whoa. That is completely overboard reaction to what I just did. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that, maybe. But whoa. Can we not talk about this reasonably? What's all this emotion and yikes? This is an overboard reaction. Wow. Okay, well, that's because you keep stuffing this down, and if you won't ever sit down and examine yourself, of where's this anger coming from? What is the source? What's the wellspring of this anger? And you don't go back and address it, then you can and will taint, twist, poison, ruin, bust apart every new relationship that you make, because you have not addressed the true nature of your problem. This is not an easy thing to do, and many people are walking around doing this and not even realizing it. They have never had the awareness of what they're doing, and typically it's really hard to point it out because that will trip the trigger. So you kind of have to get to a point where you're a little disgusted with yourself. Why does this keep happening to me? You got to ask yourself the question, if this keeps happening to me with multiple different people and it keeps popping up, maybe I just have to sit down and think about what I am truly doing. Okay, now, how do we do that? We have to first say, identify what the feeling is. I'm anxious. I'm angry. Okay. Why? Well, because of this, right in front of me. This thing happened. Really? Is that all it takes to make you so angry and have such a huge, over-the-top emotional response? Probably not. No, not really. Well, last week, well, this, well, I'm tired, well, it's been exhausting around here. Okay, so let's say, for the sake of the argument, your feelings are valid. You have good feelings. Okay, you're feeling anxious. All right. What's the source of this anxiety? Is this the first time you've had anxiety? No. Well, what triggered anxiety before? And you can start to walk back in the past of, okay, this popped up my anxiety, that popped up my anxiety. I've had this anxious feeling. How far back can you go? How far back can you remember the feelings you're having now? And go back as far as you can and try to identify where it came from. Like, what was going on in my life in the greater picture that could have brought out this anxiety? What could have been going on in my life so that I became an anxiety filled person? And you will be able to identify it if you're honest. You'll be like, okay, well, these things happened way back then, and that was so traumatic. And ever since, I remember being a happy-go-lucky kid, and then this and that happened, and then after that, I started to have these nightmares. I started to be afraid to be alone in the dark, and all kinds of things. Okay, so possibly it's this traumatic event. Maybe it's just the way you were raised. Maybe it's something you were pushed into that you were not ready to do, and it created all this anxiety. So that's the source of your anxiety. Okay, so now I have it with me, and it just wants to pop out all the time for not a good reason. Like, I'm an adult now. This is a problem I can handle, but I'm still having a child, like a traumatic anxiety response that I experienced as a child. But I actually have no reason to fear now because I'm a grown adult. I can handle this problem. There's nothing to fear here. You have to identify that there is nothing here I cannot handle as an adult. Okay, we've done that. Now you have to change the language in your brain. You have to tell yourself, okay, well, in the moment when those feelings rise up, you have to be honest right then and there and say, what is this? Okay, I'm feeling anxious. Why? Okay, that's an excuse. That's not a good reason to feel this anxiety. I mean, examine it. I can handle this. I can handle this problem. Okay, so then the next question is, I feel the anxiety. How should I behave? Is my behavior good? No. The way I'm behaving is wrong. I'm hurting the people around me with my trauma response. Okay, so I'm going to practice calming down, telling myself it's okay. This is nothing wrong here. You have to talk to yourself. It's good if you have another person to talk it through with, but that only works if you are willing to listen to that person. And that person has to be honest with you, and you have to be committed to listen and respond humbly and not defensively. This will help you identify whether or not you are making excuses for your outburst or you actually have a reason. Now, if you have identified a good reason for your anger, or you might have a good reason for your sadness and bitterness and resentment, you might have a good reason for it, then you have to identify whether or not, just because I have a good reason to do it, Like other people would say, yeah, I don't blame you, okay? Is it the right thing still? Is it right to behave this way? How should I behave? How should I handle this problem? With grace and strength and humility and humbleness? Or do I dive headfirst into my feelings? And what a ride that usually ends up being. It's not fun. I hope I articulated this well. I feel as if there's more to this subject that I haven't quite gotten a hold of up in here. I just wanted to share this insight because I thought it could possibly get a person, not prescriptively to follow exactly what I said, but to get you to stop. Just stop. Stop the reacting. Stop the emotion. And do pause. Pause and think. Pause and think. And possibly you could get on a different track of thinking and heal. You all have a God blessed day. See you in the next one.